Revenge films.
My sister and I were born 12 years apart. When she got married, I was still in middle school. As soon as she got married, my dad suddenly passed away. My mom, who had been a housewife, and I, a middle schooler, were left at home. My mom spent most of her time in tears. My sister and her husband were worried, so they spent some time living with us. My mom and I said that it was okay and that they didn't have to, but they were insistent. Honestly, I really didn't want them to live with us. I'm fine with my sister, but having a guy I didn't really know in the house during adolescence was kind of tough, and I'm sure they wanted their own space too. On top of that, his attitude that he was living here for us, and that it made him a good guy, kind of pissed me off. It's not like we asked him to. My sister was always out on business trips and was always tired, and I knew that she really was only thinking of us, so I didn't tell her how I really felt. Around the time I graduated from high school, my mother passed away next. It was such a horrible shock. I was really glad that my sister was around. She had always looked out for me, but since then, she was even more attentive of me. She must have felt that she had to step in for her parents, and work wasn't as busy recently, so she had more free time. Strangely enough, my brother-in-law began to invite his parents and relatives to our house quite a lot, for some reason. At the beginning, it was only once a month, and they're now also family to my older sister, so I couldn't tell them not to come and I let them be, but they began to visit more and more. Every weekend, one of his relatives would be in the house. My brother-in-law's parents, his sister, his cousins, his aunt. Most of them were complete strangers to me, and those people were coming to mine at my mother's house and acted like it was only obvious I hosted them. I began to think it was really strange, but since my mother had died, having my sister nearby was reassuring, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Soon, a lot of their belongings were left at my house, and they were treating it like it was their own home. Then, they started telling me to leave.
You shouldn't get in the way of their happiness. You've graduated, so you should hurry up and move out.
Stop relying on your older sister so much.
Don't kid yourself into thinking it's your house.
This isn't your house anymore. It's your older sister and brother-in-law's house.
I was a university student, but because they had said it so much, I started to think that it might be true. Is it weird that I'm clinging onto the house? They had said it so much, I think I've been lightly brainwashed. Once, my brother-in-law's mother asked me how much I had been left in the will by my mother. I had left all that inheritance business to my sister and a lawyer, so I didn't know how much I had inherited, or if I had inherited anything at all. I asked my sister the same question, and when she found out what I had been told, she erupted and asked her husband, "What are you doing? Why do you want to know what my sister inherited? That has nothing to do with you." He replied,
This house is equal to being mine, so your little sister shouldn't be here.
My sister got even angrier, asking what he meant by equal to mine. A few days later, my sister called a witness to supervise a formal talk with my brother-in-law. Other than my brother-in-law, his relatives and his friends from work had barged in. He argued that he lived there for years, so he should have a right of possession, and that he lived there to take care of my mother, so he deserved compensation. He also said that my sister had taken his name, so ultimately he had the final say, and that, at the very least, my sister didn't have the right to keep it to herself. He had even typed it up in a document. Even his mother spoke down to my sister, saying,
"Know your place,"
as though she were speaking to a petulant child. I'll never forget that. My sister and her lawyer explained that I was already named as the owner of the house, and that my brother-in-law and his family were the ones freeloading. They explained that my brother-in-law had no right to the property, but he only smiled.
Then let's change the name on the title deed.
In reply, my sister said,
No, I'm only changing my name. I've had enough. I want a divorce.
My brother-in-law didn't take her seriously and still believed I would move out when I got a job. So, she started procedures to sell the house and the land, and that's when they began to panic. They visited several lawyers for advice but were rejected, and took it out on my brother-in-law.
Why didn't you do something sooner?
They weren't poor, but apparently they wanted to live in the city. For some reason, his sister had even made business cards with my address on it, and we found out that his parents had begun talks with a home remodeling company, and that they had planned to make my sister pay for it. Of course, she hadn't agreed to any of those things. When they realized that my sister wouldn't listen, my brother-in-law tried sucking up to me to get me to give up the ownership. When I responded with a clear no, he began to threaten me.
My parents' lives are hanging on this house. Your sister will become a divorcee in her 30s, and I'll put pressure on her at work. It'll be all your fault if you make the wrong decision. Are you prepared to take on that responsibility? You aren't, so sign this.
He told me this in person and over the phone. I didn't care for his parents' lives. They were just parasites trying to take over my home. But my sister was working so hard at her job. His threat to make it difficult for her made me think. I didn't feel any debt towards him. On the other hand, I felt indebted to my sister. If I were to cause her to lose her job, I was at loss, and decided to talk to her lawyer. After speaking with him, it was all told to my sister, who erupted again when she found out about the threats. She then told her office and the people around her about the situation she was in, and as a result, she was able to get a divorce without any compensation or asset distribution. My brother-in-law demanded compensation, but because it was made clear during proceedings that he had threatened me, a teenager, it was all rejected. Our house was sold and my sister and I found different apartments. My sister apologized to me until the very end and made sure that I had everything I needed. I had definitely lost my temper with my then brother-in-law, but I would never hate my sister or blame her for what happened. If anything, I felt bad that she had to get a divorce for my sake, but she didn't blame me at all and said, "I'm glad I could get away from that horrible family." My ex-brother-in-law and his family's plan had been to take over my house and then sell their own and use that money to live luxuriously. So, because they had already sold off their family business, they had no jobs. They must have realized they'd have a hard time finding work, because I heard they got into a court case for making a fuss that they wanted their old business back. Also, the situation was made known to our relatives too, and it turned out that one of them was my ex-brother-in-law's colleague. Our relative got pissed and complained to the rest of their colleagues, and my ex-brother-in-law became the target of the entire company's hate. It's only natural. Any normal person would realize that what they had done was ridiculous. My ex-brother-in-law could no longer get on with his colleagues and made mistakes repeatedly, so he was demoted. After that, a postcard arrived from a place I'd never heard of. It was from my ex-brother-in-law to my sister.
Whenever I think of that house, I wonder who must be living there now. We should be the ones living there. You, me, and my parents. We were living so happily. I don't know where we went wrong. It makes me so sad to think about it.
It's not your house. My sister got a lawyer to send it back to him. A year later, my sister got a new boyfriend. Her ex had spoken as though getting divorced would be the end of the world for her, but she's enjoying her new romance to the fullest. It makes me happy to see her so strong. Our parents are gone, but I'm really glad that my sister, who is so positive and so caring, is my sister. I'm planning a trip for the two of us to show her how grateful I am for her.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.